to just speak to you about accounting tomorrow, and then also subsequently business management as well for tomorrow. Yeah, just remind me to speak on that before we depart for today. But we're then continuing from when last I saw you guys. We're in Unit 4, which is chapter 14, I believe, financial management. Where did we get it? When you're not attending. Is it? Business review. Then it means you were present, but your mind was. Right. Cool. So the last time we met, we began with our Unit 4, which is on financial management, and where we ended off was in connection to ratios. Yes, that's where we ended up. So now we're actually going to be moving on to. Yep. Okay. Yes, financial planning and control. Financial planning and control. Right. So when it comes to financial management, like I told you guys when we first started looking at the slides and we introduced the whole learning unit. Financial management, like all the other management disciplines, does not stand in isolation. These things work together, okay? And now here, when we start to talk about financial planning and control, this is where you start to see the merging of the strategic vision, the strategic plan of the business with our finances, or in a nutshell, in financial management. So here it says, integral part of strategic planning of the business, all right, done in most businesses and organizations by means of budgets, okay? Now, I'm sure if you guys have done any business-related modules or subjects in high school, and they brought up financial management, you would have heard them talk about budgets, because this is one of the primary functions of financial management, right? You cannot do financial management without a budget, because what are you then managing financially, okay? So we need to sit down and plan ahead to say, how much should we spend? Where are we getting these resources or these finances to spend, all right? Is it going to be from selling product, or is it going to be from borrowed money? Okay, so here they're saying a budget is a formal written plan of future action expressed in monetary terms and sometimes also in physical terms to implement the strategy of the business. That's where we are now having the connection between our strategic vision or planning and obviously financial management, and to achieve goals with limited resources. All right, from your economics lectures, I know you guys have hopped on and on about limited resources, so we need not even go there, all right? But obviously we use financial management to obviously manage the limited resources we have. And then here on this slide, they're then just further speaking on the different types of budgets that we have, okay? So we have operating budgets, okay, which would then look at cost budgets, okay? How much are we going to have to expend on various business activities, on materials needed, all right, to develop or produce our product? Then income budgets, okay? Where are we going to generate our revenue from, right? How much is going to come from our product A? How much is going to come from product B? All right. And then obviously you got your profit plan and your profit budget. Now, in accounting, you guys, we've been doing learning unit 1 to 4. In learning unit 5, those of you who were there, we introduced the concept of retained earnings. Okay, and remember what we said about retained earnings is the profits that we don't pay out to shareholders. Okay, so here now you're actually seeing in the business management context, we have profit budgeting. Okay, and this is so relevant because you find that I'm sure you guys might have heard in passing over the news. Sometimes you hear MTN is issuing a dividend to shareholders. A dividend is just a fancy way of saying they're paying out profits. Okay? So obviously MTN must plan, and I'm using MTN as an example, but literally any business must plan. We're paying out in dividends, if at all we are paying out any profits. Why? Because at the end of the day, your reason for going into business is to realize a return. Right? In other words, get profits. Right? That's why you take on the risk that you obviously take on. So if you are not getting profits, if you're not getting your returns on the money that you invested, is it attractive for you to be invested in that business? Yes? No? It's not, right? So obviously you're going to end up selling your investment in that business. Does that make sense? So as a company, we must strategize and say, look, okay, we want to retain some funds for various business activities, but at the same time, we need to make sure that our stock, all right, or ownership in our company is still attractive. And so sometimes you even see some companies will even borrow money to make sure that they can pay out dividends, which to me doesn't really make sense. But that's how far people will go to make sure that they're attractive business. Okay, so just so that was relevant to share. Then financial budgets. Now you're also looking at capital expenditure budget. You're looking at the cash budget. And when we say cash, we're saying how much cash is going out, how much cash is flowing in. When you are actually looking at your debtors age analysis, typically that's will be in connection with your cash budget. All right, something if you're doing a regular BCom, you would have seen in second year in financial management. And then financing budget, this is how are we going to, how much money are we going to borrow from external parties? All right, and then obviously, well, it's not always about borrowing. Sometimes we can finance the business by actually registering on the stock exchange, all right, or even selling shares in our business privately, all right. When we sell ownership, we obviously then get financing into the business. So there's different ways that you can finance. It's not always borrowing. That was the point I obviously wanted to highlight. Yes. Like private that interest, like the risk of like overall management being bought out, and like the company getting taken over, and like. Yes, it does, but it depends. How much have you sold? You see, this is why a lot of businesses, they always want to hold on to what percentage ownership. How much? What percentage do you have control to make decisions in a business? 51. Because if you have 50 and I have 50, then it's a stalemate. Does that make sense? Okay? But if I have 51, then I have majority. All right? So if we don't sell more than 51%, or if we retain 51%, the other thing you can do is make sure that you always have a strategic alliance. So I have 30%, you have 21%. We're always on the same side, right? That way, obviously, then you can still sell quite a good chunk. And then maybe if we also have somebody else who has a 10%, right? Then we have 61. So we'll always be able to make sure decisions go our way, all right? Also, outside of that, you can say, look, I just want to retain 5% of my business, but in selling my business, within the clauses of the contract, you can obviously then say, no, I want you to retain all my employees because I want to take care of them even after having sold my business. I know they rely on this as a source of income through their salaries and so forth. Does that make sense? Because obviously, you know, when we sell, we're going to say, okay, how can we make this more profitable? We've just spent money on this business, so we want to get our return on investment as soon as possible. So we can then say, look, let's sell off that division. It's not making money. Let's get rid of this, that, and the third, or let's just cut out some heavy salaries and therefore just get rid of certain individuals. Okay. So yeah, it depends on how you sell. But yes, that is a risk. Okay. All right. At any point, guys, you have a question or comment, more than one comment. Yes.
So I don't think this is a good example, but I'm going to give it anyway. If you look in the history of British Railways, there was a time that a guy named Beeching, he became the minister for the railways in Britain. Basically, he was nicknamed the Axeman because he would often look at small little branch lines, basically not part of the main line, that are unprofitable, but yet people still depended on them. So in order to save costs on them, he just shut them down by completely cutting them off the network.
Yeah.
To be more profitable, to maximize a profit just from mainline industries, essentially.
Okay.
If you look into the Beeching cuts of British Railways, you'll understand what I mean.
Okay. No, 100%. Thank you for that comment. All I'm going to say, just to add to what you already shared, is, guys, tell me something. What's the easiest way to increase your revenue? Is it to make another sale or to cut your costs? Cut costs. All right. So that's why it's usually the first thing that people coming in would then look at, or a new financial manager would look at to say, ooh, I need some quick wins. Let's figure out how we can cut costs. Okay. Because, yeah, all the other options can be a little bit more tricky to obviously generate more revenue. For instance, if you bring in a new product, for example, right? That product may sell, it may not sell. And resources would have obviously been allocated to developing that product and obviously putting that product on the shelf. So the easiest way to obviously generate more revenue is obviously just cutting costs. Okay, then here they're talking about traditional budgeting. And this is using the actual income and expenditure of the previous year as a base and making adjustments for expected changes in circumstances. Okay. Then we've got the zero-based budgeting. Here enables the business to look at its activities and priorities afresh on an annual basis, because historical results are not taken as a basis for the next budgeting period. Okay, I'm sure there's some other budgets that, okay. So we only got those ones that they're looking at here. Now, my question to you, and it's for anybody, very simple question. Which one do you think is better? The zero base? Okay, why did you say the zero base?
Because I mean, at the annual basis, obviously they're able to tell what happened throughout the financial year, the whole year.
Okay.
And like you can compare like
from the past. Yeah. Okay. There's no wrong answer by the way. Anyone from this side, guys, this side, I haven't heard voices this side. What's happening? Talk. Anybody? Which budget do you think is better? Traditional? Okay. This side? Anything? Ladies? Anything? Nothing. Gone. Okay. Do you guys want to know my opinion? I think you need a little bit of both. Okay? It's important to look at what we've done in the past, because that gives us a good indication of what we are capable of. Does that make sense? And what is actually going on. And then the zero basis makes us start to use our imagination to say, if we are to just be a little creative. What can we come up with? How can we obviously tailor our finances in such a way that it is more ideal for us? Okay. So I think a little bit of both. Okay. And like I said, there's no wrong answer. Okay. Now here we're just looking at something that I know all of us in the room are very well aware of, and that's current assets. All right. And here they're just talking about how current assets, they're basically things that are near to cash. All right. So you've got cash itself, you've got marketable securities. Marketable securities, you can think of those as those savings accounts that you have at the bank, 32-day account, and all those other different, there's a whole host of them that you can obviously just notify the bank and then you have access to your funding. Some of them, those savings accounts are not even locked up, so you don't even need to notify them. You just need to make a withdrawal once you log into your profile. Then here they're saying current assets are needed to ensure the smooth and continuous functioning of the business. Why? Somebody talk to me. Why? Why are they needed? Why are current assets needed to ensure the smooth functioning of the business? How do we pay our current liabilities? With current assets. All right? All right, so now here they're talking about the management of current assets, the management of cash and marketable securities, all right? Cost of holding cash. And then here they talk about the cost of holding little or no cash. So, we typically use our cash to go and buy inventory, okay? And now there's always that risk of spending too much cash on inventory. Because if we spend too much cash on inventory, do we have money to meet all the other expenses that may arise? We especially if there's a surprise, like let's say there's flooding in the shop. You obviously now need to call a plumber. We need to call, maybe a construction guy to come and fix things that need repairs. All right. So if we spend too much cash into inventory, it becomes a bit problematic in terms of just managing the day-to-day expenditure or business activities. Then if we spend too little, this is now when they're referring to cost of holding cash. If we spend too little cash, we're now at risk of customers coming to the store and there's no inventory for them to purchase. We then obviously lose the customer. All right? So that's what they are basically talking to there. All right? Here, the cost of holding cash, they're also speaking to loss of interest. All right? We could invest this money in, for instance, a money market instrument with the bank and obviously earn a return rather than it just sitting in our till. Okay? Loss of purchasing power. Okay? Obviously, that's now speaking to purchasing of inventory and stuff like that. And then cost of little to no cash, loss of goodwill if we don't have stock on the shelves. All right. What's the chances I'll come back if the first time I came, or even if it's not the first time, I'll come and then you didn't have what I was looking for. Will I return again? Loss of opportunities. Okay. And then inability to claim discounts. Okay. If we have cash on hand, all right, we can obviously pay for something. We always with your suppliers, for instance, right? They may have a special where if you pay for this cash, all right, and when we say cash, it doesn't mean hard cash. We might even just be talking about having funds available in our account to make an EFT. Okay, so when we say cash, don't think we're just talking hard cash. And then when we're saying loss of opportunities, you remember during COVID, ne? Where we all thought we need to go buy so much tissue paper. If you had cash, like cash available to you, you could have obviously taken advantage of that opportunity by buying lots of tissue paper as a business, stocking it up. And then when the stores have run out of this product, you then obviously sell at a premium. All right. So you can then take advantage of these speculative type investments. Sorry, that's not the greatest example, but I hope you're getting the point where if you have cash on hand, you can take advantage of certain opportunities, all right? And we know these opportunities are not like they just pop up every quarter. They're random. Yeah.
But so was that not challenged unethical?
Was that?
Was that not challenged unethical?
What do you guys think?
Because the scale of the nature.
100%.
People want tissues, you are living.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember there was also a, and I agree with you 100%. It is. Is every business opportunity ethical, unethical?
No. But this one is a state of the nature.
100%.
People are dying when we are connecting the abuses to the trade.
No, 100%. I agree with you. And I'm not saying you should take advantage of it or you shouldn't. I'm just highlighting that that's an opportunity. Does that make sense? All right. No. And at the end of the day, what I can tell you now is, or maybe let's discuss on the whole ethical standpoint. So if you look also in terms of how technology became so much more relevant during that time, right? So everybody was now pulling in developers to further develop or enhance their websites, build certain apps on phones and things of that nature. One can also present that argument on ethical though, because now we are, focusing on taking advantage of the climate or circumstances that we have to generate more sales. Because that was the whole thing. Everybody's at home, nobody can go to the stores and so forth. So I am just presenting to you that at the end of the day, not every business opportunity is ethical. And I'm not saying you should or you shouldn't take advantage. It's good you're having those considerations as our future leaders and so forth. But I'm just highlighting that our eyes should be open to opportunities, and having cash allows us to take advantage of those opportunities. Yes, you want to say something? By all means.
No, I feel like it's fine.
You feel like it?
It's too much to the legal side.
To the legal side. No, it's fine. All right, but I hope you've gotten that takeaway. All right, opportunities. When we have cash, we can take advantage of opportunities. All right. I think we've spoken to those other points. The only one that we haven't spoken to is the cost of borrowing. If we find ourselves in an emergency, right, and now we don't have cash, we obviously are going to borrow, and we know we don't borrow for free. We're going to borrow and have to pay interest on whatever we borrow. So having no cash now is going to increase our costs by way of interest whenever we borrow. Okay, right. Cool. So here now they're just talking more to marketable securities, all right? Investment instruments in which a business earns a fixed interest income, okay? And here the three reasons to have a certain amount of cash available. The transaction motive, all right, the precautionary motive, and then obviously the speculative. Speculative is what we were talking about, where there may be sudden opportunities that the business can obviously take advantage of. Then precautionary is pretty straightforward. Here we're just saying there might be some unforeseen expenditure that we obviously need to cater to. Therefore, it would be wise to have cash on hand. Transaction is pretty straightforward, okay? Then here now, cash budget, determining the cash needs of the business, all right, is critically important for obvious reasons, all right? So here they're now just telling you the three elements that are found in the cash budget. You obviously have cash receipts, you have cash disbursements, so this is payments, fancy word for payments, and then you have your net changes in cash. So that's now the difference between your payments and obviously the cash that you've received. As simple as that. So this is something that I have pretty much been alluding to All right, the cash cycle. Okay, and again, here, remember, we're talking about the management of current assets. Oh, when I stand here, there's a bit of an echo. Interesting. Okay, so earlier I spoke on how we use our cash typically in a business to go buy inventory. Okay, all right, that's assuming that we buy our stock and then we resell. Okay, sometimes we might buy raw materials to produce a product. All right, and then that product is sold on credit, which results in us having a debtor. And eventually, at some point, this debtor is supposed to then pay us for that product. Okay, so that's what the cash cycle is all about. It's saying we are using cash to have a product that is then sold on credit. It's not that we're selling all our products on credit, all right? And then we have a debtor who's also a current asset that then gives us another current asset, which is cash. So as a business, we want to make this cycle happen as quickly as possible. And this is why we have this thing called settlement discounts, because we're trying to encourage her to settle her account as a debtor as soon as possible. Does that make sense? Because the more cash we have in the business, the more we have the ability to obviously take advantage of opportunities, transact, have precautionary funds available, okay? Which is the most ideal situation. Okay, so just make sure that you understand this cash cycle and are able to speak on it and so on and so forth, okay? Right, so then here now, continuing on the management of current assets, here they're now saying the management of debtors, okay? We all know what debtors are, people who have purchased on credit. And then here, what are they saying? Credit granted to individuals refers to consumer credit, okay? And then credit extended to businesses is known as trade credit, okay? So they're just getting into some technical terms, but that's fine. So then here now they're just talking about some important facets on the management of debtors, okay? So you have your credit policy. What is a credit policy? Somebody tell me, what's a credit policy? What do you think credit policy is? And you can Google, you can chat GPT. Yes, sir. If you fail to pay your credit. Insurance. Okay, okay. Anybody else? What is a credit policy? And here we're speaking to the management of debtors. What is a credit policy? Yes?
Let's say maybe a cycle, whether you decided that you want to collect money every 10 days, every 30 days, every 15 days, what to do with those debtors once they pass a particular time period.
So, you're touching on it, but we are skipping a very crucial stage. Before we even issue out any debt to anybody, should we not have a policy to say who actually gets credit? Because you can't just walk into any store and then have access to take things on credit, isn't it? You have to apply for credit, right? Then they assess your income, they look at your expenditure, and then they say, oh, okay, you have funds available, disposable income to actually buy things on credit. Does that make sense? So you're 100% on the money, okay? And yes, it does extend to if someone is not paying us, what other steps we'll take. Okay, maybe we'll first just send an email if they just missed their due date. If it's a week later, nothing has come in, we'll maybe make a phone call. If it now extends to a month, now we need to maybe involve lawyers or some legal. It also extends to that. But first thing we obviously want to know is who are we extending credit to? So it's that whole spectrum to say, who do we extend credit to? How do we handle them? How do we handle accounts that are overdue? And so on and so forth. And then even in the handling of accounts that are overdue, when do we give up and stop chasing that money and actually write them off as bad debts? Okay? So all of that included. Now, credit terms, we're now saying we borrowed the money to our customer, or not borrowed money, sorry, we sold on credit. How long are we going to extend this credit for? What are the terms? How many installments do we allow? Okay, and so on and so forth. Okay, right. And then lastly, then collection policy. Okay, so now this speaks also to how do we collect our monies, and also in addition to that, when we have sometimes we also hand over accounts. We hand over accounts. So when somebody hasn't paid, when I say hand over, it may mean we may say, okay, let's blacklist this person. Some businesses can go that far. And then maybe if we don't blacklist, if we haven't written off, we might say, okay, let's get the lawyers involved. All right. So all of those things are under consideration. So here now speaking to the credit policy, it says contains information on how decisions are made about who to grant credit to and how much. The 4 things that are important: character. All right. Here they say the willingness to pay. Okay. So the easiest way to judge character is a credit history. You guys will experience when you get into the working world. I know some of you might already be there in some way, shape, or capacity. Oftentimes, whenever you're applying for credit, they are asking you if you have a credit history, if you had any credit ever extended to you. Because we will see from the way you handle that credit, your character. To say how willing is this person to pay when they've taken out something on credit. All right. Then capacity. This is where we were talking about how much disposable income do you have. Okay. The more disposable income you have, obviously the more credit I'm going to extend to you, isn't it? 100%. Then capital. All right. The customer's financial resources, things outside of obviously your capacity. Right. What other resources, financial resources, can we, also look at in the event that you obviously don't pay? And then finally, conditions, current economic and business conditions. Pretty straightforward. Okay. Then here now they're just talking about your collection policy, the guidelines for collection of debtors' accounts and have not been paid by due dates. All right. Cost of granting credit. These are the costs. This is the downside, basically. Loss of interest. All right. So we could invest this money. Okay. Especially if we, in these days we have a lot of platforms where for the first 3 months, for the first 6 months, they don't charge you interest. If you had paid them cash, we could then take that money as a business and actually invest it. I know 12 months, or past 6 months, usually they will charge you interest. Okay. Then costs associated with determining customers' credit worthiness. So the energy and time we put into having employees ready and available to assessing people. All right. Remember, we're paying people to do that. Right. That's part of their job description. All right. So that obviously there's a cost associated to that. Administration and record keeping of costs. Okay, so record keeping obviously of these debtors, how far are they along, have they been paying up to date, and then obviously bad debts. That is pretty much self-explanatory. We make losses whenever somebody doesn't pay us, and we obviously have to write them off. And the moment you extend credit as a business, just know this for a fact: not everyone is going to pay you back. Not everyone is going to pay you back. Okay. No matter how well you think you structured your credit policy, okay? So you actually anticipate that. You plan for that when you start to extend credit, okay? So here now they're talking about the management of stock, of trading inventory, all right? Conflict between profit objective and operating objective, all right? Cost of holding stock and the cost of holding little or no stock. So here, we were pretty much discussing this when we were talking about the cost of holding cash and the cost of not holding cash. They're very intertwined, okay? Right. So when holding stock, loss of interest, I won't bother explaining that. Storage costs, wherever we are storing this inventory, all right, we are obviously paying rent, whether it's in our store or whether we are a dealership and we only have so many cars on the floor, and then we have a warehouse where we store most of the cars. Because remember, in a dealership, on the floor, those cars are only for display. Therefore, you walk in cars just to say, no, we have this car. Have a seat inside it, right? So they can gain, is this the type of car that I actually want to be driving, etc., etc. Okay? Then, insurance costs. Now, because we obviously have a product that we are storing somewhere, right, whether in the shop or elsewhere, we need to insure. In an ideal world, that's what you should do. Not everybody does that, obviously. And then there's the risk of, if we hold stock, things going obsolete, all right? In a grocery store type setting, or things getting rotten, all right? Things expiring, all right? That's what we're referring to there. All right. Cost of holding little or no stock. Again, loss of goodwill with customers, production interruption. So if we also need components to produce our final product, all right, that's going to interrupt the flow of production. Then loss of flexibility, okay? How would we explain that? Loss of flexibility. And then reordering costs, okay? So reordering costs, obviously, the less stock you have available to you, the more you're always going to be ordering. And that in itself is also a cost, okay? Rather than if you just have bulk, then you know, okay, we won't order again for a month, or we won't order again for a good couple of weeks, okay? So you have to weigh out what is most ideal for you based on the industry you operate in, the type of business that you are, okay? And then obviously there's this thing called the economic quantity, the economic ordering quantity, all right? It's actually a scientific way of establishing how much inventory you should be ordering at a time, all right? And it also includes the demand that you have for that specific product. And it also then also incorporates the cost that you incur whenever you order. So yeah, it's an efficient way of determining that. Then here, asset management. Here now we start to look at your long-term investment decisions and capital budgeting. But we will pause here for now, and then after the break we'll get into this and probably finish off our financial management unit. And then just discuss one or two things in relation to your test before we conclude for the day. Okay. Right. Okay. So if I could see you guys by 2:02. Yeah, it's 10 to. I'm actually giving you extra time to breathe.